Wise Words presents Howard Belafonte. In the heart of Huddersfield, amidst the hum of factories and the echoes of a changing Britain, a generation found its voice, not in classrooms or council halls, but in the raw, thunderous pulse of reggae music. This is the story of Howard Belafonte, son of Jamaican migrants, captain of the school football team, and selector of the legendary Armageddon Sound System. A man who turned basslines into battle cries and dancehalls into spaces of resistance. Born in 1963, Howard's journey mirrors the struggles, the triumphs of Huddersfield's black community, from the racism his parents endured to the riots that shook the streets, from the discipline of Caribbean household to the freedom of the sound system scene. But this isn't just about the past. It's about what was built and what's been lost. Through Armageddon Sound System, Howard and his crew didn't just play music. They forged identity, community, and defiance. But today, as venues vanish and unity frays, their legacy begs the question: who holds the keys to the future?
My name is Howard Belafonte. I was born in Far. I'm born on Bradford Road. I was born in 1963. Well, when I was growing up, I grew up in Fartown in Huddersfield. I can remember a lot from his childhood. You know, certain things where we used to, who I used to hang out with, where we used to play, what school we went to. This building, what we're in now, this is the school I went to. Talking about 50 years ago. This is the school I went to on this site. The neighborhood was mixed, you know, culturally. It was a mix, black, white, Asian. Everybody got on with each other. There was no issues or prejudices them times. Little prejudices we faced, but nothing major. Because there was a lot of black youth at that time growing up. Right, Mum and Dad come from Jamaica, so they were born in Jamaica. When they first came, my dad came to Birmingham when he first came, and then he came to Huddersfield. Mum and Dad got married in Huddersfield. I said more my dad faced racism. You know, like if we went out into town, you know, the town centre, there's a lot of racism then, you know, from skinheads and mods and rockers and, you know, just people that didn't accept, you know, the influx of people from the Caribbean. So he faced quite a bit of racism, but it didn't stop him. He got on, he worked. My dad worked all his life to retirement age. Set some good foundations for me and my brother. And my mum was the same. Mum was a nurse, so when she came over here, she trained to be a nurse, and she worked at HRI. And she spent all her career at HRI as a nurse till she retired. They touched on certain topics, you know how they were treated and whatever, but like growing up in a Caribbean household, you never asked your parents how was the day at work. You didn't ask your parents that. They went to work, they came home, and that was it. It was my mum who disciplined us. Yeah. We was more fearful of my mum. When my mum spoke or when mum shouted, we had to get into line. That was it. My dad was more laid back. It was my mum that you know, that give out the discipline. The discipline, we used to get beaten. Yeah, we used to get beaten. West Indian kids, Caribbean kids in them times, they got proper beatings, you know, with a belt or whatever came to hand. But it never did us no harm, it disciplined us. So there was a line that we knew we couldn't cross. You know, things like we couldn't make police come to the house for us. If police came to the house for us, oh my gosh, that couldn't happen. Letters coming from school, that was a no-no. So the discipline in our household was very strict. We're very strict. This site, what we're on, the Chestnut Centre, this was the old Woodhouse infant site. The wall's still the same. So the little wall that's outside, I remember that wall, and it had this green fence, you know. I remember my mum putting us on the bus down at Fartown. So we'd get the bus down at Fartown, get the bus up the hill to the school, and then a traffic warden would cross us over. And then my mum would meet us after school. My mum would meet us at the gate and then take us home. After being at Woodhouse for about a year, we used to make our own way home. So we used to cross, the traffic warden used to cross us. We used to walk down the hill. My mum used to meet us on Bradford Road, because that was a busy road, and then she used to take us across the road to home. From Woodhouse Infants, I went to Birkby Juniors. So that's where we found his identity more. You know, when we got to junior school. Again, Birkby Juniors, that was a mixed school, culturally mixed, black, white, Asian. My interest at Birkby was sport and football. That was my interest when I got to Birkby Juniors. And when we was in the first year, you couldn't qualify for the football team till you got to the third and fourth year. So that was my aspirations when I get to the third year, to play for the school football team. That was my ambition when I was at Birkby. The education was fine, didn't have no qualms with the education or the teachers or anything. So it was the school years was good. I can't say anything negative about it, really. The curriculum was their base curriculum. So we never learned about black history or our culture or anything. We learned that later on in life. You know, when we got to high school and we got wiser and we sought the knowledge of self. So it was their curriculum, but it was the norm. It's their curriculum. We wasn't educated in that way at that time to be looking about its roots and its history, not until we got older. So by the time I got to high school, which was Fartown, which is just down the road, again, the school was in walking distance from where we lived. So a lot of my friends from Birkby and other friends that we grew up with, we had friends that went to Deaton Juniors that came to Fartown. So we knew the majority of the people we knew at the school. I knew at the school already. So the school years at Fartown, there's no qualms with it. Again, my interest was football, getting into the football team, because I was a very good footballer. Without blowing my own trumpet, I was a very good footballer. And that was my ambition at that time. When I was at Fartown, I wanted to be a professional footballer. You know, that was my ambition. So even after school, we'd go on the park, we'd play football, weekends, we'd have big games of football. But my interest was football. So by the time I got into the third year, I was playing at the higher level with the fourth years. By the time I got to the fourth year, I was the captain of the football team, plus I played for Town Boys. Yeah, we wasn't encouraged, at the school. Wasn't encouraged by the teachers to, academically. So obviously, you're at the school, they want you to do well in your exams, they don't want you to do well in the school, but we wasn't like guided or mentored in a direction. Maybe there was too many in the class and they couldn't do that. When it comes to sports, like the PE teacher, they had more time for you, because if they saw talent, they try and, enhance that talent and encourage that talent. So they had houses at the school. Green, blue, yellow. Green, blue, yellow, red. I was in the greenhouse, which was Grenville. So we had inter-house competition, which was very competitive. And that was throughout the years at school, which we enjoyed, because we played sports against the other houses, we played football against the other houses, and it was very competitive. We enjoyed it. Reggae music, Rastafarianism, and this culture that came into our consciousness probably in his last year at school. Towards the end of his school life. So probably in the 5th year, his last year, was aware of reggae music, sound systems, culture, Rastafarianism, and the music. That's what was more focused on, because we was aware of sound systems throughout the country. So during the summertime, we had his own sound system them days, small systems, and we used to compete against each other during the summer holidays. So when we left school, so that was amongst his friends. And then when we left school, we decided to all come together. So the group of us that grew up in Fartown, there's about 3 different sounds that we had, and we used to compete against each other. And it was only when we left school we decided, no, we'll come together and build a sound together. Building a sound system, the reason for building a sound system was a combination of things. It was the love of reggae music, that was first and foremost. We was aware of different sound systems throughout the country. We all had the same interests, sound systems. In them days, reggae music wasn't played on the radio. So in them days, sound systems, this is why sound systems rose in the UK, because you couldn't hear reggae music on the radio, on the national radio. So people created their own sound systems, their own arenas to play reggae music. And that was one of the main motivations of us coming together and playing and building a sound and playing reggae music. It was a love of the music. It was a love of the music. This would have been the late 70s. So a lot of the youth, a lot of the black youth in the UK followed Rasta. There was Rasta. It was, it was an identity, something that we could identify with. So we had family throughout the country. We went through the same paths. We faced racism and oppression from the police and from society. So it was a way of banding together. But it was a peaceful, it wasn't a violent, way of life. It was a peaceful way of life. But we looked after each other and we looked after ourselves. So we was the voice of the youth in them times. We was the voice of the black youth in them times. So we're very militant. We were very militant them times. And that showed in the music that we played, how we carried ourselves, the sound system, how we identified ourselves. And because we faced so much racism and prejudice, this was our outlet and this was our way that we could, I won't say fight the system, but just stand up to the system. Huddersfield was very militant them days. There was a lot of Rastas in Huddersfield them days. In later years, a lot moved down south, went to London and whatever. But it had a very big Caribbean population in Huddersfield in them days. So everybody was going through the same struggle. But there was certain areas where you would find black people. Certain areas you wouldn't find black people. So them days, you'd find black people in Deaton, Bracknell, Bradley, Fartown, Birkby, Thornton Lodge, Dalton. You wouldn't find black people in Newsham. At them times, Newsham was a racist area. So there was Newsham, certain parts of Crossland-Moor. So we didn't venture in them. We didn't, the youth club wasn't in them places, and we didn't play sound in them places. But we was aware, of them places, and it was a lot of racism in them areas. Now, the sound system, like I said before, in Fartown, there's a lot of us who grew up together. So we grew up together, went to school together, was in each other's houses and whatever, played football on the park together. And we all came together, the majority of us came together and said, we're going to build a sound system. But amongst us, there was about 20, 30 of us them days. And there's about 3 different little sounds that we used to compete against each other. So after that little period, We built a sound called Youth Man. So that was like couple other members of the sound. They built Youth Man, and then they asked us to join. So they asked the rest of us to join. So it started off as, tell you what it started off as. It started off as chopper tone. Then, no, it started off as vital tone. Then it moved on to chopper tone, and then it moved on to Youth Man. So we used to spell Youth Man, Youtman. We took out the H, it was Youth Man. That's when we all came together. So that's how the sound, that's how Armageddon, what evolved to Armageddon, started as Youth Man. From Youth Man, as we was getting more militant and the times and whatever, we know even now, these are the last days. So we changed the name to Armageddon. So when we changed the name to Armageddon, that's when the sound reached another level. We reached another level at that time. We had about 25 members in the sound them days, but we was talented. So the guys in the sound was all talented. Everybody had the specific roles in the sound. It was like a business. We set it up like a business. So when we first started playing out, the furthest we used to play was Bradford. We used to play couple centres in Bradford. Thursday night we'd play Green Lane. Friday night we might play in a place called Mappa. Saturday we might play in one of the youth clubs in Huddersfield, but we was playing out every week. But them early days, the furthest we was playing was Bradford. And then as years went on, the sound evolved, got bigger, got more quality equipment. But them time it wasn't working, so we had to, by any means necessary, we had to get us equipment. So we won't go too much into that, but we got the equipment, how we needed to get the equipment. So this is the early 80s now. This is when the sound was peaking. Armageddon Sound was 12 tribes. So within the Rastafarian movements, there's different sets, you can say, of Rastas. We followed 12 tribes of Israel. If you read your Bible, it tells you about the 12 tribes of Israel. The tribes, according to which month you're born. So I was born in October, so I was a Danite, the color blue. So there were different colors for each of the 12 tribes and different months. But it kept us grounded. You know, the 12 tribes and the Rasta kept us grounded, because if it wasn't for 12 tribes and if it wasn't for sound system, a lot of us would have done prison sentences, would have spent a lot of time in jail. But that kept us focused. You know, it kept us focused, and it kept us living correctly amongst us friends, as you know, even as enemies. You know, it shows in the Bible about loving your enemies. We'd show us enemies love as much as what we could, but it kept us grounded and it kept us out of jail. Right, so the sound system, like I said, there was about 25 members. The 5 board of directors then, you know, the 5 main men in the sound were myself. I was the selector for the sound, so I played the music. There was Debo, General Debo. He was the operator, so he looked after the amplification, made sure that the sound sounded correct. There's a term, you know, wiring up the sound, it's called stringing up the sound. That's the term, stringing up the sound. So Debo used to string up the amps. There was Robbie Roo, he was the mic man. So he chatted live lyrics over the records. Very talented. There was T-Dread, a mic man, again, very talented. And there was Admiral, another mic man, very talented. The 5 of us, I was, like I said before, I was a selector. So they call me Daddy Lee. Now, Daddy Lee came from in Jamaica, there was a famous sound in Jamaica called Jalove. Very famous sound that we used to aspire to. It was a 12 tribe sound, and their selector was called Ailawe. So that's what they used to call me at first, Ailawe. And then it got shortened to Lee, Daddy Lee, because at the time I had my first daughter. So it changed from Ailawe to Lawe to Lee to Daddy Lee. And that's how I got my name. And that's how I was known as, Daddy Lee the selector. Daddy Lee Dan. So Daddy Lee from the tribe of Dan. So it's Daddy Lee Dan. So at them time, we used to compete. So it was, the rivalry was intense in them days. And when I say intense, intense. So we used to have sound clashes regular. So in them days, in Huddersfield, there was a lot of sounds in them times. Loads of sounds. Everybody, the majority of black youth was part of a sound in them days. So before we came, there was Earth Rocker. They was from Fartown. Shackerton Esquire, they were from Deaton. Wadada, they were from Lockwood. So before we started playing sound, they was like the main three sounds. So Shackerton represented Deaton, Rocker represented Fartown. Right, so yeah, so the early sound, and then them times there was Warwicker, there was Ital Warrior, there was Kingston Rock, there was Natty Dread, there was Mr. Tremble, there was King Iman, who was a resident sound at Venn Street. And then we came after, so after that era, although them guys were still playing out and we used to compete against them guys were older than us. So after that time, there was us, Armageddon, there was King Maestro, and then various other sounds came after that. So them times, our main rivals was King Maestro and Earth Rocker. In the 80s, before our time, I would say Earth Rocker, Shackerton, they was the baddest sounds in Huddersfield. When it got to, say, the mid-80s, that was our time. So we ran Huddersfield. People may have their own opinion, but you know, you can't get away from the facts. From the early 80s to the beginning of the 90s, to the end of the 80s, Armageddon ran Huddersfield. We was the main sound in Huddersfield. We played out every weekend. There wasn't a weekend that didn't pass that we wasn't playing somewhere in the country. We played throughout the country. Everywhere throughout the country. We played abroad. We played in Amsterdam. We was known throughout. But what was unique, our sound was unique. One of the things that no other sound did, right, and we can document this, is we recorded all our dancers. Every one of our dancers we recorded, so we had a history, because we know in years to come, we want this history. And then, so that was obviously, it was cassette them times, so it'd be either through the system or it'd be live in the dance. But every dance that we had, we recorded. Later years, so in the last 5 years, what we decided to do, every single dance that we recorded on cassette, we burn onto CD. So we've got every dance, what we played in, on CD. Like you asked, especially the 5 original Armageddon man, any one of us, we can put in one of the CDs. We could put in a CD, right, not knowing which dance it is, and with 5 minutes of hearing that, we can tell you what dance it was, what year it was, where it was, and who we were playing. In them days, the black community was more united than what it is now, because we was all facing the same oppression. So even the sounds, even though it was competitive with sound system, and some of the clashes ended up in a scuffle or a fight or whatever, but it wasn't, we didn't want to kill each other. It was, you know, a healthy rivalry. But the town was more unified in them days, because it was a smaller black population than what it is now, and everybody knew each other. So if you didn't know each other, you know the family or whatever. Even from different parts of the town, you was aware of, oh yeah, that's so-and-so family or whatever. And it was from the Caribbean islands that the majority of the black people came from in Huddersfield them times. The venues back in them days, it's not like now. There's no venues now. There's nowhere for these young people to go. This is why there's issues amongst these young. In them days, we had many places that we could play a sound system. You can't play a sound system nowhere in any venues these days. They've got noise abatement, they've got noise licensing, they've got all kinds of different laws. Probably to oppress us. I don't know. But in them days, we had Venn Street. So that was the headquarters, Venn Street. Everybody throughout the people from Jamaica, every artist, every well-known artist in them days performed at Venn Street. Venn Street was the headquarters in Huddersfield. So they had big sound clashes. You had a lot of stage shows. We used to play there regular in Venn Street. It was called Venn Street. We knew it as Venn Street because the road that it was on is Venn Street, which is Kingsgate now. So the road what it was on was Venn Street, but the name of the club, it was Cleopatra's at first, and then they changed it to Silver Sands. Then there was the Arawak Club in Paddock. We used to play up there quite regular. Sounds used to play up there quite regular. And we used to play all the youth clubs, because in them days, every area had a youth club. So, example, Armageddon was playing. We're playing a sound in Lockwood. Went to Lockwood Youth Club. The majority of Fartown people would head down to Lockwood, to support us. Armageddon was playing at Deaton Youth Club. The whole of Fartown used to come up, and vice versa. When the Deaton Sounds was playing down Fartown, they'd come. It was Birkby Civic them days, so that was our youth club. Our youth club was Birkby Civic. And that was where the Hadawi Centre is now. That's the site of the Hadawi Centre. So every area had the youth club. So there was a youth club that we used to play in, and them sessions used to go 10 o'clock. On a Friday, we might get a special late dance till 11. And then the nightclubs that we used to play in, Arawak, Venn Street, there was Friendly and Trades in the town centre. And then venues used to go until about 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock in the morning, which was, people used to come out earlier them days. So by 11 o'clock, dance would be full. You know what I mean? It's not like now. People are leaving the yard till midnight to go dance, and dance is going on till 4, 5, 6 o'clock. But them time, dance used to finish at 2, but you had your enjoyment. It was a good night, 10 till 2. The black community, like I said previously, the black community was more unified them days. So a lot of the traditions from the Caribbean, as parents brought them over, and we followed them traditions. Like Sunday, everybody was round the table on a Sunday and ate together. The family ate together on a Sunday, and it was usually rice and peas and chicken. That's what we had on Sunday. We used to look forward to. It was like a banquet. We used to look forward to a Sunday dinner. It was like a banquet. Sometimes family would come and join us for Sunday dinner. During the week when we ate, we all had to eat together, because this was instilled in us. The discipline, as I've said earlier, that was instilled in us. We used to visit family them days. So we'd visit family a lot in them days. So as cousins and my mum's friends, my dad's friends, we'd visit them regular. We'd see people would see each other them days. People would communicate more them days. People would go out together, People would go out together a lot more them days. Them days, there's a lot more pubs. So as parents used to go to the pub on a Saturday, bring us back fish and chips, which was a treat. So there's a lot of traditions that, that they brought over from the Caribbean that instilled in us that we grew up with. Church, we used to have to go to church as parents. So the majority of black families had a very Christian upbringing. So them times we used to go to church. So mum would bring us to church, and then they'll have a Sunday school at church. So the palm us off to the Sunday school, and then maybe bring us back for the end of the church service as well. But that was every Sunday. We didn't like going to church, if I'm honest with you. but we had to go. We couldn't get out of it. We couldn't get out of it, but we had to go to church. It wasn't getting out of church wasn't an option. It wasn't an option. We could, them days, in them days, what our parents said was going to happen, or this is what we're doing. So yeah, so getting out of church, it wasn't an option for us to get out of church. We didn't have no choice. We never had no say in the matter. What our parents, this times have changed. What our parents said was happening, this is what's happening. There's no back chat, there's no arguing, there's no debating, there's no reasoning, there's no alternatives. This is what was happening. So we couldn't get out of church, we had to go. From the day I was born, and in the early days, we wasn't aware of, I think it was known as the Huddersfield Corporation in them days, but we wasn't aware of politics or corporation or council. We wasn't aware. We knew was fighting oppression, police, police oppression. That was the main thing. That sus laws, getting stopped on the streets. That was the enemy in them days. Going back, which is well documented. There's an uprising in the early 80s. There was riots throughout the UK. Every major city with a black population had riots in them, and it was because of police oppression. So it wasn't because the council never treated us right. Probably that was the case as well, but we wasn't aware them days. So the housing wasn't good because we was all clumped together in the inner cities. So there was ghettos, so London, there was Brixton, there was Tottenham, there was Bristol, St Paul's, there was Birmingham, Handsworth, there was Liverpool, Toxteth, there was Manchester, Moss Side, there was Leeds, Chapeltown, there was Bradford, Manningham, there was Nottingham, Radford, there was Huddersfield, Fartown, Deaton, Bracknell. So them days, our enemy was the police. So that's who oppressed us. We was oppressed by the police. Every day there was a war. There was a war. That's why the riots erupted in the early 80s. In the early 80s, there was riots throughout the country, but it was the voice of the young, So our first generation, we was the first generation in this country. We was more militant than our parents. Our parents didn't, we confronted violence with violence, Our parents wasn't about that. But the first generation black youths in the UK were militant. So we didn't stand from authority or the police or, we stood up for ourselves. And that was the big explosion of riots. The riots kicked off everywhere, every major city in the UK in the early 80s. And Huddersfield was part of it. Huddersfield, there was riots in Huddersfield same way. In them days, the early 80s, there was a law called SUS, S-U-S. So the police only they didn't have to have no evidence. If they thought, or if they perceived, or that you were suspicious or you was carrying something suspicious, they could stop and search you. So, but it's like the stop and search laws now. There's no different. They've just rephrased it and renamed it. There's no different. So we'd be coming home from the youth club. You'd see a police car come down, and we knew as this police car's coming down, we knew it's coming back up. It'd come down on the other side, and we know it's coming back up. And sure enough, come back up. So it wants to search us, wants to give us grief, wants us to react so they can arrest us and whatever. And we used to face that daily. Especially on the night time coming home from the youth club. Because we used to walk. So we used to walk from Birkby Civic back to Fartown, back to the ghetto. So as what these youths call the ends now, was called the ghetto in them days. So as we got older, so probably in his mid to late 20s, we became aware of politics, the council, and how decisions within our council affected our daily lives, which we wasn't aware before. So certain things about youth clubs and about cuts and whatever, and we we begin to get clued up on certain things, you know, within the council. And as we got older, we realised that this council's not really for us. They're not really doing a lot for us. You know, as parents wasn't political in that way. They're tuning into, because like when the news, I'm going to go back a bit now. When the news was on in the house, you had to be quiet. So anytime the news was on in the house, you had to be quiet. So them times as parents was aware of world politics and national politics, but as regards the council, they wasn't too into council politics. So only when we got older, like I said, mid to late 20s, which would have been mid 80s to late 80s, we begin to realise there's a council that governs our lives. This council governs us daily lives, and it makes a lot of decisions that we are not part of, or we should be involved in, but we're not. So as we get older, we realise that, hang on, there's a council here that's making decisions of how we live, and we're not a part of this. So it's from that stage right up until now that I'm aware of the council and decision making in the council, and how it affects us, how it affects the black community, how certain things have been unfair towards the black community with regards to this council. This council, I would say that they could do a lot more. I'm trying to be diplomatic here, right? I'm trying to be diplomatic here. They could do a lot more for the BME community in Huddersfield. A lot more. There's a lot of things that they should be doing that they're not doing. It was only when I was growing up, so after that, you know, that mid-20s, late 20s, early 80s period, that I realised that certain money, and I wasn't aware of this before, it was only after that I was aware certain money would come from central government into the community for the BME community, and it was getting diverted to other places. We wasn't seeing the money, but we wasn't clued up on politics or local politics them times. We didn't have nobody in the council who was a voice for us. So we didn't have a voice. We didn't have a voice in the council. We didn't have nobody who we could go to, you know. We didn't have no mentors in them days. We didn't have no elders guiding us. We had as parents, and there were certain elders that fought the system, but they were few and far between. You know, they were just a handful. I'd say the council, there's a lot of advice I could give this council. One, they need to engage with the black community more. That's what they need to do. Two, they need to listen to certain prominent members within the black community and stop taking personalities, because within the council, there's people within the council who have got their personalities and their own agenda, and it reflects through the work. It reflects through the work. So certain sections of the community they won't work with, or they'll sidestep, or because of their personal differences, or because they're in positions of power. We don't have no people in positions of power. Huddersfield, with the population of black people in Huddersfield, we only got a councillor just the other day. I'm not aware of nobody high up in council, in cabinet, that speaks for us. If there was somebody high up, I think it would be a lot different. It would be a lot different because they would engage with us more, and there would be a more of a working relationship. But as I can see it, there isn't a working relationship with this present council. I think this council got a lot to answer for. The young people today, they've got it a lot harder than us. But these young people don't feel part of society. This is why you've got this youth crime throughout the country. They can't get jobs, they can't get no training. The education, some will take the education, some won't. But the problem with these young people, it's a combination. The problem is a combination. So the government need to be doing a lot more geared towards these young people and engaging with these young people. Again, in every city, Huddersfield especially, there's people like myself who mentor these young people, but the work's hard because we don't get no support from certain sections of the council who should be supporting us. They've washed the hands of certain sections of the community, and they're just left to get on with it. It's going to breed this kind of environment. They say that you're a product of your environment. Somebody from certain postcodes goes for a job. It's difficult for them. They find it hard to get a job. The job opportunities amongst Afro-Caribbean youths is very difficult. So it's very difficult throughout the country. So Huddersfield is no different to anywhere else in the country. The Afro-Caribbean population in Huddersfield, again, struggle to find work, to find training, to find employment. It's like they don't get no help. And this is what it seems like, you know, on ground level, at grassroots level. The council, again, as I've said, I think they could be doing a lot more if they listened. You know, if they listened to various people in positions in the community, a lot more could be done. So the young people find it hard. Yeah, I remember definitely a story my dad used to say. He said in them days, you could be working, you could leave a job that same day, and you could go into another job the same day. You could leave a job and go to the labour exchange, is what they called it, which was the job centre. They called it the labour exchange. But you could go there and you could get a job same day. There wasn't a shortage of jobs them days. For young people, I would say education is the key. So for young people, education definitely is the key. That's what we was brought. That's what anybody coming from a Caribbean background, parents who came to this country, it was education. We was encouraged to go to school to learn, though, you know, because, you know, you're getting free education in this country. So it was important. So the message is still the same today. You know, the education amongst the young people, I would say, is the key, because as BME communities, we need to have people in positions of power, decision-making positions, so we can shape our future. We can help shape our future. At the moment, our future is getting shaped. The young people's future is getting shaped for them. That's why a lot of them disassociate themselves from the council, from society, to their own thing. When Miss Thatcher, the Thatcher years, it was about, you know, have as much as you can, and you know that policy is still in effect today. The young people that go to prison, if you go to jail for whatever reason, a lot of these young people shouldn't be going to jail because society is criminalising them unnecessarily. You come out of jail, to get a job is near enough impossible if you've got a prison sentence. And we know this, we're not talking this, we know this from experience, not my experience, but from experience of young youths that I mentor and try and get them work, try and get in employment. Once they've got a prison record, it's near enough impossible. So when they're competing against somebody who hasn't had a prison record, they'll never get a job. So they feel that, why should I bother? And then young people do their own thing. And this is what's happening today in society. My message to the young people is education, and don't give up, keep trying. That's my message. You know, society, you know, it suits certain sections of society, of young people, you know, fighting against each other, and it suits certain people's agenda. But these young people don't realise that. They will realise that when they get older and they grow out of this, they'll realise that, you know, that what's going on now, you know, it suits a lot of people in authority. So my message is to don't get involved or try and stay clear of, this what society wants you to do or what society expects you to do, or push you in a certain direction. Because, like I said earlier, as you get older, you'll realize, you'll see the bigger picture and you'll realize, right, this is what was happening when we was younger, and these postcode wars and these gang wars, and the streets that these happen on, nobody owns these streets. The government owns the streets. We don't own them. But because people are pigeonholed and, this is what it's come to. This was always coming. This was always coming. What's happening in society today was always going to come amongst us young people. Now the elders before my time, so like now I'm an elder in the community, but there's many elders before my time. When we was growing up, Mr. Bonnick, I remember, Wendell Chapman, I remember, the Flowers, I remember Mr. and Mrs. Flowers, they was like pioneers in the town. The club owners, Mr. Babs, Mr. Johnson, the youth workers at them times, because there were some elder youth workers who tried to put us on the, on the right path and whatever. Power from Black Star Social Club on Chapel Hill, he was an elder. There was many elders that, inspired us, and, they had a vision. They could see the vision. But there was few and far between. There's only a handful. There are probably a few that'll come to mind after that I can't remember, but there was a few around in them times. Yeah, I would say a big thank you. I would have achieved so much even without them, because that's my mindset. So that's my mindset. So without them, yes, I would have achieved, because we looked at elders, not just in our community in Huddersfield, we looked at elders throughout the country, because we could identify with certain elders. So big respect to the elders, because they paved the way for us and they opened certain doors and they went through the struggle. They went through the struggle before we did, before we took the baton. But I would be the same without the elders, because that's my mindset. That's my mindset.